So, you're a trained police officer, you have the heightened levels that I've gone through, you have the information that you've told us about, you see the man moving around, yet you don't pay enough attention to him so that he's able to grasp and bring up to a firing position a 30-inch, 38.5-inch long rifle.
Correct.
Do you agree that that does not seem logical, how this man, sitting in a chair, who at the very least you have in your peripheral vision, could do that and you not be aware of it as he starts to go to the floor to get it, or go in the floor region to get it?
Well, I've always said that I noticed his movement to the right. And I saw the gun, and I was able to react to it.
Within the time frame you had, and I'm not a scientist, but I would believe it would probably take him in excess of 2 seconds, maybe 3, to get the gun from the floor, grasp it, move up in his chair, grasp the gun, bring it up over the arm, bring it in over the arm, and bring it to a firing position and point it at you, and you're standing 9 to 10 feet away from him, and you don't notice that. And you're a trained police officer with this special training who has a heightened level of alert.
But I did notice it, and I responded to it.
You didn't notice it, you say, until it was up in a firing position.
It was pointed at me.
That's a firing position, I believe.
All right. You may believe that.
Can you offer any explanation at all as to how you wouldn't have seen enough of this man who has some degree of disability, would not seen enough of this man's movement that it wouldn't have alerted you to come over? Because you know, you're saying if he starts to get up out of the chair, you'll front kick him. If he goes for the back, pardon me?
If he came up and stood up and approached me in an aggressive fashion, or had brandished the bat or the stick, then I would have considered being able to overpower him physically. Sure, yes.
So yet he's able to do this. Can you offer any explanation how in a room 13 by 14, and you've been in it, I've been in it, the commissioner's been in it, you got to take away from that the size of the mantle, the size of the chair. You say 10 feet. I believe it will be shown to be less than that. How this man could be so surreptitious as to get that rifle up and you not see, let alone the rifle, his body movement, which should have been pronounced enough with your training to immediately react without hauling a firearm out. Can you offer any explanation for that?
Him moving around in the chair, being fidgety throughout our interaction may have lent to a higher degree of complacency on my part. That's very possible, yes.
Okay. Complacency on your part?
Yes.
That's not in line with your training to be complacent.
I said it may have lent to a degree of complacency.
But that's not in line with any training you've taken as a professional to be complacent in a situation like that.
No, of course
with a
not.
heightened level of alert, correct?
Of course not.
And if it is complacency, it's had a very bad result in this situation, correct?
Is it, sorry?
If it is complacency on your part, negligent I'll call it, that you didn't see this rifle, that complacency had a significantly bad result, the death of Mr. Dunphy.
Well, any heightened complacency, if that is the case, I'm trying to offer you the explanation you asked for,
Okay.
may have afforded him the increased opportunity to lean to the right because he had been moving so much in the chair. What led to the death of Don Dunphy was him pointing the firearm at me.
And does it ever cross your mind, have you ever tried to reason out, knowing the facts that you do now, that this is a man that had no issues that day? This is a man that had been out with his daughter and her partner for an Easter lunch. This is a man that had come home, had gone to his daughter's, then come home, park in his driveway, and text a friend to come up to his house for whatever reason, to have a toke, to bring up some firewood, whatever reason. At the time this is going on with you, he might well have been expecting Colin Dinn to show up. Have you ever grappled with the fact as to how did this man all of a sudden bring out a rifle that's no one's seen, no one has knowledge of, and to top it off, he couldn't even use the rifle. The bolt is open. I grant you, you would not have seen that. Did they ever grapple with the fact that why would this man, over an argument, which he's been having lots of with workers' comp, do this when indeed his neighbor may be dropping up? That seem odd to you?
Do I grapple with that whole scenario?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do I. So do I. Do you have any answers?
I think it perhaps speaks to the level of volatility. It speaks to how entrenched that particular unresolved grievance may have been. Maybe my presence questioning on that was a tipping point. I think it speaks to perhaps the level of crisis he really was in.
But where was the crisis that day? Where was the crisis? The crisis wasn't the meal at the Woodstock. The crisis wasn't when he dropped his rig off and he took his daughter's partner's rig because he had a flat ear coming out of his tire. The crisis wasn't when he texted his friend to come up who he just passed on the road. Where was the crisis? What generated a crisis to a level that a man who had never been violent before hauls a rifle on a police officer and is able to do it, even if he is disabled, without you seeing either him move or the gun come up?
Okay, I'll try to answer as much of that as I can. The crisis, what I'm referring to, would go back well beyond that day. I'm not suggesting he was in crisis before seeing me. He himself has said he was in crisis. He said that in his own tweets. I recall reading that. I am in crisis. I think probably within the 3 to 4 month period before I arrived there.
He was in a living crisis. We'd agree on that.
That's what I'm referring to.
Not a mental crisis.
Well, I don't know. But he was indeed in a crisis.
So what happened in those few minutes? Because something drastic had to happen. What happened in those few minutes, and how was he able to be so slick, smooth, and capable to outfox a police officer with significant training, significant coursework, and a heightened level of concern when he went in there? How was he able to do that?
It's a good question. Of course, I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Smythe, do I understand this to be the grouping of facts that you're going to ask the Commissioner to accept at the end of the day? You get a tweet. When it's read in full, you agree it's not a threat. Correct?
Correct.
You confirm from various sources the man has no history of violence. Correct?
Correct.
Nonetheless, you deem it something you have to check out right away.
As soon as practicable, yes.
Okay? You drive to his home, arriving at about dinner time on Easter Sunday. Correct?
Correct.
You knock on the window to the man's home. No one answers. You subsequently come back to the man's home, knock on the window again, and he comes to the door. Correct?
Correct.
You give two versions, and we did not make this an issue. You were the one that were so certain of how you introduced yourself, made a point of it in all the statements, you gave contradicting versions of how you ID'd yourself, whether it was Sergeant Joe Smythe or it was just Joe Smythe RNC. Correct?
I think I gave approximately 6 versions, but
That is correct? That you did, in one version, give it as Sergeant Joe Smythe.
one version I did.
You're invited into the man's home. Correct?
Yes,
You say your comments and actions somehow upset him.
it would seem so, yes.
You tell the inquiry you had concerns before you went there. Correct?
I had multiple concerns, yes,
Okay.
in various
These
related to various
concerns,
aspects
I'm sorry, go ahead.
related to various components of the entire situation.
These concerns clearly heightened as you talked to him. Correct?
Correct?
You say he became more agitated and started to move around in the chair.
Correct?
You were very carefully looking at him, even if it was through your peripheral vision.
At times, yes.
You say the next thing you know, a gun is pointed at you.
Correct?
You agree that the gun did not come from the inside arm of the chair.
I do.
You agree the gun was not fastened to the side of the chair.
And not in how I had originally stated, no.
You believe it is possible it may have been in the pocket, but it is more likely it was on the floor region.
I did not say that.
Do you agree it was either in the pocket, in the manner you spoke of, or on the floor region,
Or potentially leaned up against the wall.
or leaned up against the wall?
Yes, that is my
Either
belief.
position of which would have taken him against the wall would have meant he would have had to at least turn partially backwards to secure the gun. If it's on the floor, he would have had to lean partially over, pick up the gun, bring it up over the arm, and point it at you. Do you agree?
No.
What don't you agree with?
I don't believe he would have to turn back onto me to reach behind that chair, no.
He would be able to sit in the chair and reach back with his arm like that and grab a gun while you're looking at him that's up against the wall.
Right. No, I appreciate the theatrics, but what I'm referring to is him being able to do this.
So you think it may come from behind you, or behind him, and his actions would not have been visible to you as he would have had to reach back, lift the gun up, bring it up in some kind of arc, I think.
I don't think, no.
You don't think so? It came from somewhere on his right side. That's what you're asking the commission to accept.
Correct.
You didn't see it, even though he was in your vision. You had a heightened sense of concern, and the gun is 38.5 inches long. Correct?
Yes.
A man who has at least some degree of disability is able to surreptitiously bring this gun to the point where the barrel is pointing at you, and likely into a firing position, and the first time you see it is the barrel is pointing at you.
By the time I was able to focus in on it, see that it was a gun, it was pointed at me, yes.
This happens without you seeing any of his body movements in that chair to alert you that he may be doing this.
I've always said that I saw it in my peripheral vision he was reaching to the right.
The barrel follows you across the room,
Yes.
and you have no choice but to fire 4 times, 2 to center mass, 2 to the head, 3 of which appear to have hit Mr. Dunphy and killed him.
Yes.
All of this takes place in a room that's 13 by 14 feet, with you, by your own estimation, somewhere around 10 feet. I would put it probably 7.5 to 8.